Alright guys, what's going on, and welcome back to another video. So for most of 2021, all we heard was inflation is going up. The Federal Reserve, they can't stop spending just yet. We keep hearing that additional stimulus that the government has provided is what has caused lasting impact on our economy and our wallets. Well, experts are saying that inflation is only getting worse, but is this actually true? It can't be true. How can inflation be getting worse? Here's what we know. Families that are moving from a more expensive state to a less expensive state, this is only causing more inflation because now in the new location, those families are going to overpay for real estate. They're going to go and buy furniture. Maybe they're going to buy another vehicle, right? And that's just adding another household to the mix. It's creating other issues. And according to a report from Redfin just recently, the relationship between inflation and migration is at 4.3%. Now, consumer prices has risen by 7% from December to December. That's big. Now, let me address what some CEOs have been saying regarding inflation and what the Federal Reserve Chairman said, which is he is pretty much saying that lower income households and people on a fixed income are screwed. I want to address that, and I will address that in just a minute. First, let's get to what some of the CEOs from some of the biggest companies in the United States are actually saying. Apple's CEO, Tim Cook, he said, "The world has changed." The 3M CFO said, I quote, "What we saw exiting December was the pace of inflation slowed down versus the prior months. It's still inflationary, but we saw the pace slow down, and I think that's a positive. But again, it will depend on how winter plays itself out. It depends on logistics, etc., and whether the ports get uncongested." That is a huge issue because what we are seeing is worker shortages are creating issues with the supply chain, and the supply chain backlog and congestion is creating additional worker shortages. So we're just going in this never-ending cycle. That's disastrous. And the Southwest Airlines CFO said, and I quote, "We continue to experience inflationary cost pressure experienced in the fourth quarter, primarily in salary, wages, and benefits, and airport costs as expected. Of course, the labor market continues to be a challenge, which continues to pressure wage rates across the board," which is true. Now, all these statements are unique, but here's a statement that is going to give you chills. This week, Jerome Powell was asked if the Federal Reserve can accurately measure how inflation is impacting some of the most vulnerable households. And he said, and I quote, "People who are on fixed incomes and spending most or all of what they are earning on food, gas, rent, heating, and basic necessities. And so inflation right away forces people like that to make very difficult decisions." He goes on to say, and I quote, "I'm not aware of inflation falling more on social economic groups, but that isn't the point. The point is that some people are really just prone to suffer more." Prone to suffer more. In other words, you are screwed. Now, he goes on and says and tries to really backtrack what he said, and that right now, those that are economically well off, that inflation isn't good, but high inflation, that is bad. But he does say they will be able to continue to eat and keep their homes and drive their cars. So, why is all this important? This gives us an idea of where the Federal Reserve is at. This really does. He says that inflation is bad for everybody, but really is only bad for those without assets. And I've been saying this for a while. I said this back when the pandemic first started, is you have to pretty much create a necessity for yourself. You have to prove to your employer that you are needed. They can't get rid of you. You have to create assets. You have to invest. You have to save. You have to pay off debt. Now, let me just address this because high inflation is bad for everybody. At this time, it's bad for everybody, but mainly because the Federal Reserve is trying to control it by doing things like raising interest rates, which is a big thing, cutting the economic spending that has been propping up our economy for the past 2 years. By doing those two things, it's going to bring the inflation down, okay? But this isn't going to happen quick enough. Here's the truth. Inflation is actually just hurting those without assets to sell. If you are rich, inflation is hurting you if you don't have assets that you can sell and lock in profits. Let me just give you an idea, okay? Because I think a lot of people are wondering, well, inflation is bad for everybody. No, inflation has been good to some. Let me give you some examples. Let's say if somebody has stocks, real estate, or other assets that they can sell, something that they have had substantial gains on in the past 2 years. Let's say they lose out on additional profit, but that's it. But they can still sell and they're not selling at a loss. Now, when somebody on a fixed income or those with low earnings, they experience inflation, a lot of times they don't have much to sell. They have a car, they have a home, they can't sell their home because they live there. They can't sell their car because they need it to get to work. And because of that, they're actually paying out of pocket for the same goods and services that the rich are paying for, but with pure profits. Okay? For example, let's say I bought, which I did, let's say I bought a bunch of stocks. You know, I'm not even gonna give you, it doesn't matter what they were, but let's say I spent $10,000 in 2020. Well, as long as I bought the right ones, and really any stock was the right one, because the stock market grew. Let's say that $10,000, it probably easily turned into, I'd say $16,000 to $17,000, okay? From a one-time investment in the stock market early in 2020. Well, if I put $10,000 and now $16,000 or $17,000, I got $6,000 or $7,000 of pure profit, right? Appreciation, right? The stocks grew. That's great. I can sell that. Now I would have to pay taxes on my profit. But, okay, I pay taxes. Let's say I pay 50%. Let's say I make $6,000 and pay 50%. I have to pay $3,000 in taxes, but I also have $3,000 in profit. Guess what? If inflation, let's just say, let's say 10% over the past 2 years, right? I know that number isn't right, but let's say 10%. If it's 10%, great. Now, if I had $10,000, 10% inflation would mean I would have about $1,000 of inflation, right? So my $10,000 would actually only really give me about $9,000 worth of buying power. But guess what? I put it into stocks. I invested. Now I get $3,000 back, so I get $13,000 back. Well, guess what? That $1,000 of inflation, I made $3,000 off it. That's a $2,000 difference. A $2,000 difference. That's the reason why the rich are not being as impacted or affected negatively as much. What they're saying is, oh yeah, we're hurting because of inflation. But really you're just not locking in bigger profits. That's it. Most people are still up. So if you don't, and honestly, if you don't think there's a difference between how the rich are living and how the lower income earners are living, then just go look around your city. Because honestly, more people are likely to be homeless. People are moving back into their parents' homes to try to save money, and savings is down. People are trying to lower their costs. At the same time, savings is down. Now, this is a reason, there really is a reason for all this. Inflation is the key factor. And right now, this is what has the stock market just kind of going up and down, teetering really, is because nobody knows. Is the Federal Reserve going to control this or not? Honestly, I have no clue. So, is inflation getting worse? As of right now, yes. Is it going to get better? As of right now, I don't know. I honestly can't tell you. But all I can tell you is just be prepared for whatever it is to come next. Save some money, pay off your bills, invest into strong companies only, and you should be fine. All right? So, if you have any questions on any of this stuff, please let me know your questions down in the comment section below. Just want to thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.